Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:12 p.m. Central. It's getting hotter in Florida. Me and Christina got an RV, and it's hard to even go in it during the daytime with the AC on in it. Got to wait till night. Like it's that bad. It's been like close to 100, and the bugs are insane. Like giving the dogs flea medicine and still dealing with babies on them, and it's just crazy. Like good stuff that's not like frontline is not even affecting these things are evolving or something. But mosquitoes and bugs, I hate it. I was born the day after Christmas, Capricorn. Thank God we get cold winters now. So I'm just trying to hold out till November for the cold weather. But we got Jay. I know. I don't even know if it does it then. But we got Jay McNicholas here, and our guest tonight is Cliff Dunning. His book is Cannabis and Sexual Ecstasy for Men, Awakening the Prostate for Multiple Orgasms. And it's good to have you here, Cliff. And
Jeff, Jay, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And he has an award-winning podcast, Earth Ancients. We'll get into that as well. And Destiny is something else he's launched. He's in California. Well, it's great to have you here. And, I'm familiar with cannabis for quite some time, since my early 20s. My dad told me if I ever did drugs, he'd shoot me. And I believed it. So I didn't do any until he died. And after I'd also went through testicular cancer and all that crap. Of course, they didn't give me any during that. All I got was a Benadryl or something. But later I found it, and I've always enjoyed it. And I do believe it has good health qualities and spiritual qualities. And medicinals here in Florida, surprisingly, it's expensive, and everything's still kind of expensive, but you catch it on sales when it's the best time. And, let's get started. So what first got you into this book? What started the journey of you said, I'm going to do a book on cannabis and sex?
I am somewhat of a historian, and I was doing research for another book, which comes out later this year, called The Black Knight Satellite. And the Black Knight Satellite is in everybody's sweet spot who's an alternative, or what I call an anomalist, things that are not typically understood. And what I discovered is that the Hindus, the Chinese, and a number of ancient cultures were not only cultivating cannabis, but they were using it ceremonially. The Hindus most notably were using it for tantric rituals, where they were sanctifying the Lord Shiva, the god of yoga, tantric yoga, but also Shiva is the god of cannabis. And what I discovered was that they had what we would consider today orgies, where they would drink this product called Bang, Phang, which is a cannabis derivative with milk and sugar. And they would drink this prior to having these gatherings of tantric sex, and men and women were not only having massive pleasure, but they're having repeatable orgasms. And we're not just talking about one-up kinds of situations. These guys were drinking and having sex for hours during the day during these Lord Shiva ceremonies. And so I began studying cannabis, and here in San Francisco, we have an event called the San Francisco Cannabis Summit, which is a business program where doctors, farmers, and advocates of cannabis get together and talk. I became the program director for this program back in 2017, and through conversations with doctors, conversations with sexologists, conversations with the growers, I discovered that there were strains of cannabis that were designed just primarily for arousal and also creativity. These are strains of cannabis that have high levels of a terpene known as limonene. And when we were growing up, I don't know, I'm 60, but when I was growing up, the weed back then was so weak and wasn't really developed to any level of sophistication that if you looked at back even 10 years ago, the cannabis that was on the market or through the black market was just very, very weak. In the last decade, geneticists have developed specific types of strains using these terpenes. I'm mentioning limonene, but there's a whole bunch of other terpenes. And here in California and in other states where cannabis is legal, there's strains with high levels of limonene that are perfect for creativity. People that are artists that want to write with more passion, that want to paint, that want to do whatever physical activities that are creative. The offshoot of that is that you have creativity, but you also have high levels of arousal. So this book is based on my research with physicians, growers, and experiencers, notably men and women, who have discovered that cannabis can be used for sexual arousal beyond our understanding. I mean, people are having orgasms where they're actually leaving their body. And as the native Hindus would say, they are reaching nirvana.
Yeah.
So,
So your introductions of sexual revolution for men, a lot of men, keep this stuff to themselves. I
yeah,
mean, I've heard of the prostate, but I'm not that familiar with the sexual side of it. Besides gooch jokes and stuff like that from silly stuff, that's
yeah,
about it. That's about the extent. So I'm
right.
opening to learning about it, and multi-orgasmic man is the first chapter, and of course you get into the prostate gland. I guess tell us more about the prostate gland. Is it
So,
the
yeah,
it's not just the gooch. The gooch is the little part between there. It's deeper.
yeah. So women have a G spot, which is just inside the vagina, which is a trigger point for them to have multiple orgasms. But it's not that simple. You have to be relaxed. You have to be confident of your partner. You have to be in a comfortable setting. The same thing goes for men, but the male G spot is the prostate, the P spot. And when it is stimulated, it can deliver orgasms that are not only extremely powerful, but do not rely on the penis to deliver an orgasm. So if you stimulate the prostate using a device that was developed by a urologist, which is a prostate massager, when you stimulate the prostate, you eliminate the penis having to have an erection, having to deliver an orgasm, and it goes directly to the master sex gland, which is the prostate. So a little bit of cannabis, you're relaxed, your arousal is ramped up to a high degree, a little massage, and off you go. Now, there's been recordings of men having multiple orgasms that last over an hour. And I can tell you that I've had orgasms that last off and on. They're flowing because you don't have an orgasm for 30 minutes, you would be dead. But they flow. High, multiple orgasms, down, high, low. I've recorded men having 30-minute up to 60-minute flowing orgasms. Now, you can't do it without cannabis because cannabis shuts off the monkey brain. What's going on? What am I feeling? Oh my God, what is happening to me? When you smoke or you eat an edible that has cannabis with the strains that I specify in this book, you can have a multi-orgasmic experience similar to a woman's multiple orgasm. And I'll tell you that I jokingly say that in some cases you can have out of body experiences. They're so powerful and reach those higher states. But believe me, there are recordings of, and people tell me, and there's a whole group of of men and women and couples who report that some of these orgasms are so powerful that you actually leave your body and the autonomic nervous system takes over, or you're just kind of rather convulsing, and the body keeps breathing and functioning, and but it's so powerful that your consciousness leaves the body. So this is something that I believe our ancestors understood. It's not written about a great deal in the United States. Men are not educated about their sexuality. Men are shamed about talking about their penis, about having an orgasm. It's like, yeah, I got off. What else you want to know? And so this book is written for men to demystify their sexuality. And it doesn't matter what your preference is, if you're a gay man, a bisexual man, or you're straight. Uh, I mean, my girlfriend is amazed when we're together and I'm have just a little bit of a new product, a new strain, and there we go. She'll sit and watch me. It's kind of fun. So
Well, I know there's I guess a stigma with men and sexuality. I can remember when I was in high school. Let me tell my sad story about my sexual experience. That was terrible. I uh, I got caught by a family member in the shower with Guns N' Roses playing, doing my business, and a friend found out. This was ninth grade. A friend found out, went to school, and told everyone, and I
oh,
got made fun of. I got called the Boston Strangler. I mean, terrible. Even coaches walked up to me and said, Jeffrey, let me shake your hand. And then I went to go shake their hand and they put it back because they think, I was dirty or whatever. And it was a terrible experience. Now, if someone made a joke or said something about it, I'd tell them to go die in a hole. But back then, I was a virgin in ninth grade. And I had actually had a kind of a, I don't know, I was 15 and this older bisexual woman kind of well, not kind of, she did molest me, and it was her trying to do stuff with her fingers to my nether region, and I was a virgin, so I didn't know what was happening. And most people, men, hear that story like, yeah, yeah, but when you kind of look at it, it's not any different than a girl being molested by some freako or whatever. But my dad found her passed out and drunk. But anyway, that was before, and that led to me self pleasuring, and then I was caught by Axl Rose, take me down to the Paradise City, and a friend told the school, and here's where it gets really sad. The next year after that, I got testicular cancer,
oh
and
man,
and who's to say, a neighbor got it too, so it could have been environmental, but I'm sure that situation didn't help it any. But on the bright side, I'm fine now. I lost one in the war, get deeper penetration. So hey, but anyway, after that, a year or so later, my dad died, and that's what I was telling you why we do the show. I start to see really weird stuff. I interview people from shamanism to UFOs. I had a lot of weird experiences. So that suffering, I think, was like a shamanic death of sorts. To lose a nut. I just remember waking up from exploratory surgery, like, you lost a nut, you have to go chemo, and I just started crying. And I rolled home in a wheelchair with a big Frankenstein uh, thing under my stomach, and that was how chemo started. But for some
yeah,
reason, all that suffering led to me having bizarro, like when I went through chemo, I prayed to be a superhero. I was in the comics. I latched onto those Anne Rice vampire books, uh, and I prayed to be healed and to be a superhero because I was in the comics and stuff. And I did start to have some pretty weird experiences that I'm still dealing with psychologically, and have some PTSD of seeing strange things over the house. I don't know if I was ever abducted or anything weird like that, but I've seen weird beings. I've seen them completely sober. I've seen them partying with witnesses, but
wow,
which consisted of beings of light. I saw two leave my house. I've seen them many times, like beings made out of energy. And then I've seen some little hooded beings in the woods standing around a black box. And there's some other weird stuff. But that's what led to doing the show. But my point, that was shame with sexuality. So it's
Yeah.
a good thing that you're doing this for men. I mean, there are topics in this that are making me feel like Mr. Rogers, like, oh God, we're talking about this right now. Because we don't normally do shows like this, but hopefully it helps with
Yeah.
shame and
In your
healing.
case, it sounds like you were traumatized with this shaming, and it's hard to say if, and I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but there's a lot of thinking that when trauma happens to a young person, it can be internalized. And who's to say that this didn't lead to your testicular cancer?
Yeah.
There's no way to know. Medicine is very rudimentary right now, great for analyzing problems, but not really great at understanding the uh, mental causation of things. So who knows? But uh, definitely an awakening in some state of mind. And then the other experiences you've had are also very fascinating. Um, I the book that I wrote basically came through after being this program director, and experimenting on myself. I had prostate problems. I had prostatitis for years, and so I used these massagers that were developed by the urologist Hiro Takashima, and he was a Japanese urologist who created this massager for the American uh, male citizens, as well as the Japanese. And we don't take care of a prostate enough. The prostate only is thought about when it's got a inflammation issue, prostatitis, which is what that is, has a cancer issue, and then they want to take it out of your body. But they're finding out now that the prostate also secretes unique hormones. And the thinking in the last couple of years is that you want to keep your prostate, you want to keep it in good shape. If you're having problems with the prostate, you want to massage it if you can with one of these devices, and avoid medications. Well, the after effect, one of the benefits of taking care of your prostate is more enhanced uh, orgasms. And if you can have a little bit of arousal product, which is the cannabis, you can actually increase your ability to have not just one, but multiple orgasms, which is fascinating to think about.
And I mean, there's prostate cancer and stuff. That's stuff that, I've worried about. And doing this, that makes it healthier on some level, right? It helps it. Like, is that one of, I
It,
mean,
yeah,
people's not active who never do it ever, that could, I could see it's kind of like the pineal gland stuff. Uh,
exactly. Yeah. So I
using or
mean, it's like
losing.
anything else. If you have problems with your prostate, and that can be anything from poor urine flow, which is the urethra, which is connected, the tube that connects the prostate and the bladder to the penis, and this is how you discharge urine and semen. But you can also have inflammation. A lot of men have poor diets; they don't exercise. The prostate can take a real beating if you have a sedentary lifestyle and you're drinking a lot of alcohol, or you're taking a lot of drugs, or you just have a really bad diet. This can affect the prostate and affect your ability to function sexually. So the prostate is now becoming a key narrative in the medical groups, your doctor, medical societies, pharmacology, and so forth and so on, to look at it and to keep it as healthy as possible, because it looks like, same as the woman's ovaries, as a key uh, health benefit when it's in its best health.
So, is there anything else you can do besides dildos to stimulate it?
Well, they're not dildos. They're very small
they're
devices.
tools.
I mean, you can use dildos. That's a whole different conversation. If you're into dildos,
Let's not. Uh, Jay's going to demonstrate gooch magic tonight.
No,
but
I will not.
but no, I mean I can understand use it or lose it, that terminology with prostate cancer and stuff like that. Uh, but definitely one of the things I've been dealing with lately is I was doing kratom a lot because I have arthritis and stuff. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's the stuff that's kind of like an opioid. It's like a plant, like a coffee, and a lot of people use it to come off pharmaceuticals and heroin. I didn't do heroin, but like they would use it to come off pain pills. It's like this powdery substance. It's called kratom. It's legal in Florida, but I was doing it too much probably, but compared to the other people who use it, probably not that much. I'd take 3 or 4 capsules a day. I know other people do that would laugh at that, but what it does after a while, you take a few, it's a stimulant, it's a coffee, it's in the coffee family. You take more and it becomes an opioid.
oh, really?
And it's called kratom. There's been soccer moms protesting in front of the White House for it. Like, it's interesting if you do a little journey and read about it. And it's a leaf. I forget where it's from. But anyway, I was doing it too much, so I quit doing it. And I've also had some possible kidney stone stuff and blood pressure stuff. So now I'm taking something called Stonebreaker, which is supposed to help Shaka Piedro or something like that. But it's this thing that's supposed to help break up your kidney stones naturally. It has really good reviews on Amazon, so hopefully those aren't fake reviews. But there's a lot of people saying it's really good for that. But my thing is, with the blood pressure stuff, I've been trying to avoid blood pressure medicine because all of that stuff kills your phallus. Like, you're not going to have a sex life ever again if you get on blood pressure. Or if there's some out there that you can, please let me know. I haven't found it. But
Yeah, no, a blood pressure medicine is one of those easily prescribed medicines that doctors just over prescribe. In fact, I had a physical just before I took off for Egypt earlier in the year, and the guy said, "Well, you got elevated blood pressure. We want to give you Lipitor, which is a statin." And I was like, "Well, tell me why you want to do that." And I don't like to take drugs. And he goes, "Well, you don't want to have a heart attack or have a stroke." And I said to my doctor, who's a Kaiser doctor, I said, "Well, what's the herbal equivalent? Because I'd rather not take a drug." Well, he didn't know. He doesn't know. As it turns out, there are herbal equivalents to statin drugs. So if you have high blood pressure and the doctor says, "Well, we're going to put you on this," you need to make sure that you're understanding what's going to happen. My brother's on Lipitor. His digestion has gone to hell. He's gained weight because he's not processing food the same way. So this is a big problem in America. We are so reliant on the allopathic diet point of view that we don't even consider the herbal remedy that these drugs were derived from. And most of the drugs that we take today have their basis on plant medicine. So if you can look up the plant where these drugs were derived from and ask your physician either to help you or do the work on yourself, that is going to be much more beneficial to your body. And you're not going to lose your sexual appetite. You're not going to have problems with digestion. And as we get older, we gain weight. I mean, I'm 60 years old, and it's harder than hell to get weight off no matter what you do. It's just part of the way the body works. As you get older, it becomes more sluggish in processing. And so I'm all about herbs.
did you find any in particular that helped you with your blood pressure?
I increased my exercise to, instead of a couple of days hiking, I do it 3 days. And also I eliminated any sugary drinks, which is a big one for that. And also, I don't have the name of it in front of me, but there's a couple of herb teas that replicate the statin drugs,
Wow.
which the big one is Lipitor. So
Well, yeah.
there's herbal teas. It's a red tea, a red leaf tea.
Well, if you come across it later, send it to me and I'll
Yeah,
check it out.
yeah, I'll send it to you.
And well, that's the big thing when I was tying into weed. When you're having blood pressure stuff, you got to be careful with the weed. You got to stick to them indicas, though. I don't always do that, but sometimes it's you got to find the strains that will that jive with you because there's some white buffalo stuff making me like like you got to be careful, especially with
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to figure out with blood pressure and stuff is the strains. I know there's one 9 pound hammer. That one's pretty good for
yeah.
the.
If you go to weedmaps.com and punch in search for blood pressure support, I think there's a couple of strains that are out there right now. Now you're in Florida, and getting them from one state to another is the biggest challenge. But I want to mention something that's really critical when you're using cannabis. Because of the strength, because of the level of purity, you don't need more than a microdose. For most of us, that's a short hit on a joint or a short inhalation on a pipe or a bong. Uh, or if you're into the edibles, it's just a small piece. Edibles are really dangerous, and I don't advise them, especially if you're looking for the arousal strains. There's just such a possibility if you're new to cannabis that you can take too much and you get what they call couch lock, where you're just sitting in your couch or your chair waiting for it to wear off.
I hate that stuff. Like I can do tinctures, but that the edible I have to be careful because it feels like I'm doing shrooms and I'm gonna die if you do
Exactly.
too much of
Yeah.
that.
I don't do edibles. I don't suggest them. But again, when the United States is completely legal, there'll be, in fact, I have a close friend that's on my podcast. She is a doctor. She's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is growing some of the best weed in the country. And a lot of these strains are so strong, you just need a little tiny hit. And that's all you need to do. You should not exceed uh, a slow alteration, perception, a feeling. The more that you overtake the body and its senses, the more likely you are to get couch lock when you're just sitting and waiting for it to wear off. Sometimes you need that. If you've had a long day, you don't want to think about anything, and you've had a problematic day, couch lock can be nice. But those are the old days when we were growing up. Getting high to be wasted was the way to go. I don't support High Times magazine simply because that's all they care about is getting plastered. And the new strains of cannabis are designed for so much more. You just need a little tiny bit. And the microdosing is where you should be.
So that's just like taking one hit. One hit. Is that all you normally do when you do it?
One hit. Yeah. Only one hit.
Well, that certainly conserves the weed. That the financial. That's the biggest thing. This stuff's expensive.
Oh,
Here,
3.5 grams out here in California is average is $50. I
wow,
mean,
that's about here too. Same thing.
oh, is it about that much?
Yeah, a
So, I
hundred
mean,
for a pretty good 1 gram vape, which is a pretty good bit, but it can go fast considering. About a
yeah,
hundred for that, and then about 50 for what you just said, 3.5. Sometimes lately they have sales and some deals, but
yeah.
they used to
So,
not.
so my whole thing is to use this as a plant medicine. If you study the physiological effects of cannabis on the body, it's almost like it was designed for human consumption uh, because of the compounds that are in the product in weed. And if you study that, you'll see that you don't need to have huge volumes of it. You don't need to do a whole bowl. You don't need to smoke a whole cigarette or joint. You just need a little tiny hit, especially in today's markets where the THC levels are so high now that the most basic strains like Sour Diesel or Blue Dream uh, or Granddaddy Purple, that these are commonly recognized strains, are so well designed and so strong, you don't need more than one little hit and you're done.
Definitely. And I want to get down to that. I usually hit a vape through the day and then I'll do a bowl at night or something. But I used to do a lot worse than that. Like I would, like the college days or whatever, like for sure. But it's calmed down. But that's the biggest problem with it here is just the financial aspect. I would think California would have got more lax than it would have went down, but it's still expensive there apparently, just like here.
Uh,
It sounds similar.
I mean, there's so many. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and let me tell you, there's a dispensary where they sell it almost on every block. It's so ridiculous. And when and this will happen to the whole country eventually, is that there'll be areas that have more availability than others, and as more people demand it, the prices will start going down. There'll be more varieties. I just mentioned that Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Oklahoma as a whole, is growing huge volumes of cannabis. So it's not just Colorado and the California that's growing. It's mid country, mid US, and as I definitely see more growth, more farming as it becomes more legal. So
Yeah, I want to try that Willie Nelson stuff. I haven't seen it yet. There's Jimmy Buffett down here. That's pretty good.
no,
So
Willie
much
does a
Willie
good
Nelson
job.
here.
Willie
We have
grows
varying
in.
dispensaries.
I think Willie Nelson's down in Southern California, his farm. So I
I'd
mean,
like to try it.
yeah, I mean, it's going to open the whole world. Why it's not legal? I think it's our Christian ethic, which runs through much of the United States. Um, it is the fear of people going crazy, which is totally a fallacy. I mean, uh, alcohol's legal, and anybody can get a beer, anybody can get a shot of booze. This
Well,
is much more
I can
beneficial
actually,
in many
I
ways.
can actually tell you, Cliff, what the reason is, and there are several, but the main reason is the federal government. What a lot of people don't realize is that the federal government has several patents on cannabis, CBD oils, and other marijuana products that they don't want anyone to know about, and they're not making any money off of it right now, but they can. The main lobbyist behind why there's so much stigma behind marijuana is the gateway drugs, cigarettes, alcohol, and caffeine. Those three, they're mostly not so much the caffeine growers, but the tobacco growers and the beer brewers, Anheuser Busch, those kind of companies they have huge groups lobbying against it in the federal government because it would take away from their sales.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah, I guarantee you that most people I know, if marijuana was made legal across the country tomorrow, we'd stop buying beer. To be quite honest with you. And the other thing is that the stigma is that when I was in college, one of my friend's roommates took a class on illegal drugs and drug activity, and there's a scale. It's like 1 through 5, and I think 1 is the harmless stuff, and on scale 1 or level 1 is tobacco, caffeine, and alcohol, and aspirin, and a few other things. Level 5 are types of drugs that there's no medical benefits. There's no reason to research it. There's no mechanical benefits or fabric benefits, paper benefits. Marijuana is number 5 on this list of drugs that are bad. And then I think cocaine is 3 and heroin is 4. And they say marijuana is the gateway drug. Well, how can you take the worst possible drug on this list and it's a gateway to less harmful, less poisonous drugs? So it's all federal government and lobbyists for alcohol and tobacco, and that really sucks. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be taxed and legalized, just like alcohol and cigarettes. I mean, cigarettes now you have to be 21 to buy them. You had to be 21 to buy marijuana. So what? When I was in high school, we were the last group of kids to be grandfather claused in to go into D.C. and purchase. We could buy beer or wine and take it across the border. In the bars and clubs, we could buy beer, wine, or liquor, but we couldn't buy liquor in the liquor stores and bring it across the border. But we were the last grandfathered in for that. The stigma behind it is that it kills people, and more people die from alcohol abuse than marijuana per year. So it's not
Yeah.
good. The U.S. government really wants to have control on it. Why they don't legalize it? The amount of just selling it as a recreational and or medicinal device alone could bolster the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
You use it for other things, like we can make oils out of it to lubricate our vehicles. You could make gun oil to clean your guns. You could make rope for the Revolutionary War. They actually, George Washington actually made farmers with more than an acre of land that they grew on had to make at least half of their land, at least 1 acre of their land. If they were 2 acres, half of it was hemp, which is a strain of marijuana, so they could make rope and canvas for the Navy, and jackets and coats for the Army. So there are lots of other uses for it other than just getting high.
Yeah, it's true. And I think the other thing that you didn't touch on, but it's also a big problem, is that the pharmaceutical companies are really afraid of the derivatives from cannabis that are known about. I mean, honest to God, there is, if you go do a search on the internet for healing cancer with cannabis, there are thousands of people who have had their tumors shrink, who have had their conditions reversed simply by consuming cannabis, because it is a powerful natural detox and cleanse that a lot of people have used outside of their medical establishment to heal themselves. So
yeah, I saw this video on that on skin cancer. This guy had this thing on his nose that it had eaten a hole in his nose. Like you could see from the outside to the inside, and he started rubbing hash oil, just black goo, on his nose every day. And I don't know how long it took, but the hole closed up, and the cancer that he had on his skin was completely destroyed. And the doctors didn't want to believe it, but he did a video. Like every day he would put a lid on there, and then he'd show the pictures of it day to day. And the hole, I mean, it was a big hole too. It wasn't like, like a piercing hole. It was, you maybe stick the end of a pencil through it. Yeah, it's pretty big of a hole. Yeah, to have in your nose.
Yeah, yeah. I do know that in the fall there's legislation. I think it's 17 states are going to either vote to make it medical only, or medical and recreational, which will almost complete the country. Now, the East Coast is taking a little bit longer to ratify the legalization of marijuana, but I see it happening in the next few years. Even the stubborn southern states that take forever to change, I think that this will be such an outcry by their citizens that they'll have to do it. And you made a very, very good point. When you look at the revenue from sales of cannabis, they're in the billions of dollars. I think California is $2 to $3 billion this year. Colorado was 1.2 billion. I mean, we're talking not a few million. We're talking $1 billion in revenue that these states can use, and so they'll kind of wake up to that eventually.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I called it in 2016. Jeff and I we did with Joe one of his political shows on the results of the elections and laws that were being passed. And Colorado had passed the recreational law, and it was January 2016 when it took effect. And they said that they expected for the whole year, just the whole year, January to December, that their revenues were expected to be around 25 million just for the recreational side alone, not counting the medical side of it. And if I don't know if you remember, but by the end of February, beginning of March, they ran out of recreational product. They completely sold out.
Wow!
They didn't recoup until like April, and they still had some for the medical people, for the medical sales, but the recreational stores were out for a month or so. They got it back, started selling again in April, but for just January, February, and March, they made $16 million.
Yeah, that's amazing.
3 months. And so the revenues alone would it's unbelievable what you could do with it. And I think Colorado, the profits from the recreational sales goes to like their public school system, and the medical sales goes to like the Colorado Rockies, football stadium or whatever. The problem with that, I think, is that the government isn't getting any chunk of that. The federal government isn't getting a chunk of that, and I think that's why they're fighting it. They're not letting it go through. I don't know how many total states we have now, but it's going fast. I mean, I predicted it would be like dominoes, like within 10 years, and we're within 10 years now, almost, of all the states being ready to be.
I'm hoping it's going to be less than 10 years, Jay, because 10 years is too long. I think.
We're almost there at 10 years. I mean,
yeah, I have a section in the book where I talk about what I call cannabis tourism, where if you live in a state that's illegal, you pick up, you cross the border, or you fly to a state that has legalized marijuana and you enjoy a weekend. But, the problem is that you can't comfortably bring it back to your home unless you drive, obviously. And one of the big things that I talk about, and I have a website called The Male Orgasm, is grow your own. Grow your own weed. And it's so easy to grow, so easy to get a good harvest that anybody can do it. And obviously, the term weed is true. It's like a weed. It grows easily with sunlight. But people are afraid to grow and be caught with the plants in their backyard, and not only the police, but maybe the neighbors might out them. So I hear you when you're saying that maybe the whole country will be legalized in 10 years. I'm thinking much before that. I'm hoping in the next couple of years that not only the states will ratify and make it legal, but the federal government will recognize it and they'll pass a law so that these producers, farmers, distributors, and retail can have bank accounts allowing them to get loans and things like that. Because right now, the banks are not allowed federally to support cannabis industry. So we're still challenged on many levels.
Yeah, it is a huge challenge. But I think right now we're at 17 or 18 states that are already, at least medically, and then you said there's another 16 or 17 that are
on the ballot.
Somewhere around the 33, 35 state range. That's almost all the way there.
We're almost there.
Yeah. It's a good bit. Now, one of the things that you did mention earlier was certain strains to get orgasms. So in this chapter 5, I think is where you talk about that.
4 and 5.
Okay, well, chapter 5 is actually titled "Sexually Stimulating Pot." So, what strains do you look for to get stimulated as a man? And are there strains for women and strains for men?
So the listing that I have in this sexually stimulating pot chapter are for arousal for women and men. So, but obviously, if you are not familiar or haven't been using cannabis, you need to take it very, very lightly. And the recommendation is to microdose, very little hits, very little pipe fills, just a little hit in your lungs. Sit for a minute or two, let it take you. How does it feel to be altered? It's not like you're drinking alcohol. It's a different feeling. And then if you're by yourself or you're with your mate, you can feel the arousal coming forward. So in the book, I list the top 20 strains that are available in the West Side and also some of the East Coast. But there's notable strains that have been around for at least a decade, and those include Granddaddy Purple, Trainwreck, Ham Dog. One of my favorite is Sour Diesel. But there's others. There's a whole bunch of others.
I
Yeah.
like Girl Scout cookies. I haven't had it in a long time. I'm looking for it. It's hard to get. Girl Scout cookies.
Some of the
I
names
mean,
are a
there's
little
some
funny, but
really crazy names. I mean, there's one
yeah,
called Bubblegum Kush,
yeah, I've heard of
you
that one.
know,
Yeah,
and that thing gets you really hot and bothered. I'll tell you.
Here's some I like that are indicas. The one's called Fire Alien Master. Another
Okay.
one's called White Alien Fire, and they're indicas,
Right.
but they do me right. They don't make me freak out or anything. So
One of the things that I emphasize on the website that I didn't get into a great deal is because there are so many variations and so many name changes depending on where they were created, you need to look at the terpene profiles. And the majority of strains that have the creativity and the arousal effects are high in limonene, which is a very important terpene, and the one that people should be looking for if they get the book or if they get to the website. And I give everybody a chance to review chapter 4 for free. That has the listing of all the strains. When you go to your dispensary or you're going somewhere to buy cannabis, you want to emphasize for creativity and arousal terpenes or strains that are high in limonene. So that is the key terpene. That's the one you need to dial up, and it's you'll see it in suggested strains for creativity. Well, the majority of those creative strains are also powerfully effective for arousal, for orgasm, for relaxing you enough to have a really good time sexually. So, and as we become more legal, I think what's going to happen is that each state will have their favorites, right?
mm-hmm.
And so the names I'm giving you right now will be the foundation for future strains. So if you look at a strain now and you go to like weedmaps.com, you punch in sour diesel, you'll see that the originating strain was a very early strain like Maui Wowie or
Which I've had that before.
yeah, but those are stuff that when we were growing up were plants that were very hardy that lasted, and they are now the foundation for these new what I call super strains that are available in legal states. So again, if you get the book, if you don't want to buy the book, go to the website, the maleorgasm.com, go to chapter 4, look at the strains that I offer, and then go from there and then look them up yourself and see what ones have the highest levels of limonene, the terpene that really sparks arousal and creativity. One last thing. Also check, and I have it on here, the percentage of the psychoactive substance THC. If a cannabis strain has too high a level of THC, then you're going to be jello. You're going to get what I call couch lock. You're going to have a hit, and you're just going to sit there and not be able to really function. So.
I know exactly what you're talking about. But the problem I was going to suggest about with that is, like I said, when we were kids, we didn't have bubblegum kush and purple grape, this, that, and the other. We were lucky if we got Colombian gold, like the real stuff. Normally it was like Mexican brown weed, which is like this looked like something that just you scraped off the bottom of your dad's golf spikes. And you'd smoke 2 or 3 hits of it and you'd cough your head off. We would call it cough to get off. One time my friends and I were able to actually get our hands on an actual ball of temple hash from Mongolia, and we split it in 4. So I got a 4th, my friend got a 4th, he got a 4th, and I started from it was like coned out, like a square cone. And I started in the middle, and one hit, and I was high for like 3 or 4 days straight. We also got a chance to get some of this Hawaiian purple bud. That was the weirdest stuff I'd ever seen. It was, like how most plants, most marijuana buds are kind of green with little red hairs in it. This was a purple flower, and then it had the rainbow of hairs in it: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, little small hairs in it. And if you squeezed it just a little bit, this like viscous liquid would kind of ooze out from under the leaves, and it was like one hit and you were done. But we also used to have a rule back in the day, and this we're talking in college, 80s, 90s. uh, it's a 3B min. If you come over to my house with weed, bring enough for everyone to have at least 3 bong hits, or don't come over.
Yeah.
And we would all put out enough so there would be, you know, at least everybody would get 3 hits. We all would do 3, and we would stop and wait. 5 minutes later, we didn't feel anything. We'd do 3 more.
Yeah.
But stuff today, I've noticed you have, like you said, you got to do 1 and stop.
Yeah.
And really, I don't even think 1 minute is enough. I think 5-10 minutes. Let that. See, the thing with marijuana, which a lot of people who don't use marijuana realize, is it hits you almost immediately. Within minutes, just within minutes of getting into your lungs, it hits you. If you're eating it, it takes a little longer. But beer is a liquid. Now, our bodies do tend to absorb water faster than they do, say, steak or pizza. So you eat a pizza that's got marijuana on it, it's going to take 45 minutes to an hour before it even starts to affect your brain. Beer, 15, 20 minutes, you're going to start feeling the effects of the first beer.
Right.
Marijuana, it's almost immediately. So within 2 or 3 minutes. So it's very dangerous stuff. But the problem that I see with it is, and I've gotten some of the, I don't have the membership card yet. The bottles they give you are almost like prescription bottles, and they don't always tell you they don't tell you all the terpenes like you're talking about. Most of the most minimal they put on there is the THC quantity. It's a percentage. And I think 21-22% is like extremely high. But you don't get all the information that you're telling the listeners to look for. So how do they get that if they can't find the strains in the book and they want to find a strain that's going to be close to what they need for the sexual arousal? Do these dispensaries, do they have information on what the terpenes are like for each strain they sell? Because it's not always on the book.
You really need to do your own research. If you're interested in an arousal or a creative strain, you should go to leafly.com, webmap or weedmap.com, and punch in arousal strains. Use the term strains or creative strains or pain management strains, and they'll list a whole page of strains that are available in your neighborhood, your area, because you're going to punch in. It's going to automatically go to the location you live in. Again, if you're in an illegal state, you're going to have to cross a border. You're going to have to get a friend to get some for you so that you can sample it. But again, my focus and my concentration is on the creative and arousal strains. I'm giving everybody the opportunity to look them up. I'm giving you the top 20 on the chapter that I give you for free on themaleorgasm.com. So you got a starting point. And then the other important part is if you're wanting to take a step further and talk about the terpenes, which are the compounds that make up that strain, limonene is the key terpene that you need to focus on.
Go ahead.
One quick thing I'd like to ask you about also on the same chapter is that these are strains to assist in arousal. Are there any strains to avoid that would be like the exact opposite?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a whole world of strains that will, shut you down if you're not wanting to be horny. I mean, it's like anything else. They're so specific today that you can go to these websites. Weed Map's my favorite, and under search, punch in pain relief, or punch in for studying, or analysis, or whatever you want to do, whatever function you want to be a part of, or whatever. Punch it in, and it'll come up with a list of strains that you can look for, and their terpene profiles. So here in California and in other states that are legal, the retail outlets want you to believe that what they call bud tenders, these are the guys that work behind the counters to sell you the weed, know what they're doing. Well, very few are trained and can be able to tell you what your terpene profile would be for this. So you got to do a little bit of research by going to these websites, searching out the profile of each strain, or just say, hey, I want something that makes me feel better. I'm depressed a lot, or I've been in a lot of pain. I hurt myself. What's a good strain for that? And it'll give you the strains, and then you start from there and work your way down.
And one thing I wanted to ask, I know in shamanism, intention's very important. What is orgasmic intention?
Yeah, intention. Thank you for that, Jeff. Intention is very, very primal when it comes to any plant medicines, and that goes beyond plant medicines. It goes into psilocybin mushrooms. It goes into ayahuasca, DMT, LSD, any of these psychotropics that affect the brain. It's really critical that you sit before you inhale or you take any of these plant medicines and say, my intention is to have a pleasurable event, to have no surprises. I want my body to acclimate perfectly to this. My intention is to enjoy it to its full potential, and I would like to have a good experience. And always set an intention. I've been promoting that for the last couple of years. And what happens when you set an intention is it's like a software application going to the brain and setting it up. So as this new data comes through, which is the psychedelic THC of the plant medicine cannabis, it aligns it with the body, with the compounds, with the physiology of the brain to open neural pathways to the prostate, to the penis, to the arousal of the brain. And so you have a really good experience. So it's really critical that we use intention. In fact, the more and more I understand about psychedelics like ayahuasca, if you don't set an intention, it's more likely that you're going to have a bad trip. And believe me, 2 hours of a bad trip, that's not where you want to go.
Yeah, and I've had experiences with psychedelics, and my preferred is DMT because it's short and you don't freak out and think you're dying during it. I like that one. They call it the businessman's acid trip. It's short and sweet. And I've had some weird experiences with that. I saw weird writing on the wall during a DMT experience to where I walked up to the wall, was like, what the hell is this? It's like some kind of alien writing on the wall. So I missed that. It's been a while. But there was some other weird one I did recently. It was like a nephew of LSD or something. I forget what it was called, but some scientist made it. I forget the name of it. But I like that. It was short and sweet. I like the short and sweet stuff, not the long, drawn out. I'm dying. I'm gonna die
Well, hey,
tonight.
not only that is when you take psychedelics or plant medicines like ayahuasca, you open a whole different Pandora's box, a different reality, and a lot of times people are encountering beings that are on a different dimension. Their animals are talking. The people are beings are talking to them. I've had number of people on my podcast talk about having experiences with beings from different worlds who say that we're here, but we're on a different frequency. So what these drugs do is they elevate or lower your frequency so that you can connect with these beings. And I'll tell you, I haven't done that because it would freak the crap out of me. But I know people who have, and you just have to sit and deal with it. You can't get up and leave. You can't be on ayahuasca, get up and walk and think I'm going to be fine. No way. That's the beauty of cannabis. I've had people on my show that are using cannabis, the strains that are really strong, and having events and experiences that are similar to ayahuasca. But I got to tell you that these people that are doing that are in clubs or in groups, so there's somebody watching over them. Because when you amp up an experience with cannabis that is levels of THC that are 90% pure, you're actually shifting your awareness and your body to a point where you really got to be careful with where you're at, you know?
Yeah, I fully agree with what you said about setting an intention before you do anything like that. I don't like to use the word bad trip. I've never had an unenjoyable trip, but I've tried mushrooms. I've tried uh, peyote, mescaline, LSD. The mushrooms I think are my favorite because they're just kind of natural, but they kind of grow on cow poop. But every time I had any one of those chemicals, my friend and I, or my friends and I, depending on how many people I was with, we had a set goal. We were going to go and do this. We went to a 4th of July party, or we went to go to a keg party. We went somewhere where there was an event or something that we intended to do to have fun.
Right.
And none of us had a bad time. The times that people have the bad times is when, number one, they're not prepared for it, and number two, they're left alone for too long.
Right.
So, like this one girl who friends of ours in college, she tried acid with us, and my roommates and friends and I, we were doing, 2 and 3 hits a day, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on the weekends for like the whole semester. They left her alone. I didn't know that. So she calls me up from my dorm. I had my fun with whatever we were doing. 4 or 5 hours later, went to my dorm to just hang out, and it's across the campus. She calls me and she says, "I'm having a horrible time. Come back over." So I go back over to her dorm, and she was losing it. I don't remember what she was losing it on, but I kind of talked her through it. But I also turned on the TV, which had the 1984 Dune director's cut on the television, which was probably a bad idea. But
yeah,
I finally got her to calm down. But that's the problem: is if you leave, especially if they've never done anything like that before, even with some of these newer strains of marijuana, if you just take a hit and go away, they're going to lose it. They're not going to have fun. They're going to start freaking out because they don't know what to expect. They don't know what the next step is. They don't know when they're going to come down, or they're going to be hungry. They're going to be thirsty. They're going to be peeing all the time. So there's a lot to go on with any of these kind of recreational chemicals. You just can't leave people alone like that especially with acid. It's a 14, 15, 16 hour dose or trip that you're going through.
Exactly. Yeah. And from what I understand on ayahuasca, there are groups in the United States that actually do the plant medicine. They have the mixture and they actually mix it, or somebody mixes it who knows what's going on. And there's people that are doing trips here, but you have to really be in a group. You have to be with somebody who really knows what's going on and understand that not only do you have to set an intention, but in some cases, the shaman will ask you to do a detox up to 30 days before you arrive and eat a certain type of foods and kind of clean yourself out a bit before you ingest a psychedelic because they're so powerful. And the group leader or the shaman really wants you to have a good experience. So I'm still open to possibly doing a ayahuasca experience at some point, but you have to be really ready to do it.
I would like to try it. Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure I'm ready. It's just, it's a matter of money and travel and going to the right place.
Yeah. Peru's about $1,000 round trip.
Yeah. And I do have a friend who's down there, and you might even know him, Bob Newton. He calls himself the Rogue.
Oh yeah. I know Bob well.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're good friends also. And so he's down there doing research on the ancient aliens type sites down there, and he's been doing some great research. But I don't know that I want to go. It's a long way to go.
Yeah.
First of all, and then to be like incapacitated by a potentially mind altering drug, that kind of makes if I could go to Arizona and do it, I'd have done it yesterday. Because you can drive out there in 3 or 4 days. I don't know.
If you really want to do it, there are groups in most states. But if it's not in a state, it could be close by. So I think there needs to be more research on it, and it's not necessarily a sanctioned drug. And DMT was researched thoroughly by Rick Strassman many years ago, and he's written 2 or 3 books. And so that we have an understanding of how that works, but that's a short high. It comes and goes within, I think, 20 minutes or less. Ayahuasca is a couple of hours. So
yeah, I think you're talking like 5 or 6 hours at least minimum. And then there's something else similar. don't remember what it's called. And it's similar to ayahuasca, but it's not ayahuasca. But it was the one in Altered States that William Hurt drinks. That might be ayahuasca. I may be mixing it up. But the one that I'm talking about is the older women in the village eat this particular fruit. It's almost like a peach. And they chew it up and then they spit it into a cauldron and boil it into an alcohol. And then they make everyone drink it. So you're basically drinking peach flavored granny spit with hallucinogenic qualities to it. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of people spitting certain, I don't know if it's drugs, certain kinds of extracts.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the animal that excretes coffee beans, and then they pick them up and you boil them, and then there's amazing coffee. But the thought of that is pretty gross. So yeah, I don't know the details of what you're talking about, but I've heard about similar practices.
Yeah, there's some strange things out there. There's also people down, and it's probably in the Amazonian region, that find a certain poisonous tree frog, lick it, and put it back on the tree, and they lose it. But if you lick the wrong frog, it's curtains. So you got to be very, very careful about which frog you want to trip off of.
There's a couple of amazing authors. One of them was Graham Hancock, who just wrote a book called Visionary. I had him on my show. Yeah. I think he's done like 15 different ayahuasca trips, and he does them like every couple of years or something. But he has had the entities tell him things. Like he had one trip where he was in Peru, and the entities said to him, "We want you to write a fiction book." And he's never written a fiction book in his life. He used to be a writer for The Economist, and then of course he's written bestseller books like The Fingerprints of the Gods.
I have a copy of that. Yeah.
He wrote this fiction book out of the blue, and it's like, according to him, it just came through. The whole book just came through in a few months, and he was just like present to take it down, But that's one of those really weird situations where this entity that he was able to meet on another level said to him that, it's time for you to consider this, So in many ways, these can be kind of cathartic, healing experiences. But I think he mentions it in his book that you have to really be around somebody who knows how to make the concoction, which is a shaman, and also can read each individual as to how they are taking in the plant medicine. If they need to have more guidance, if you start tripping out and freaking out, well, a good, notable, responsible shaman's going to be able to, give you some water, say, lay down, do this, do that, so that you come back into equilibrium. So,
yeah, I've actually run into some irresponsible shaman, and he wasn't a shaman; he was my friend, and we had gone to one of our acid trips on the 4th of July party, and he and I basically drank an entire keg empty by ourselves. But it was time to go home. It was late. I'm like, it's 5 or 6 in the morning, and we got back towards our homes, and I said, "Hey, I'm still kind of tripping. I got to go to work in 4 or 5 hours. What can I take to calm it down?" He says, "Oh, just drink some orange juice. You'll be fine." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." Orange juice has the exact opposite effect on LSD. It brings it right back. So I went home and slept for a couple hours. And right before I went to work, and I was a lifeguard at a pool, I drank a couple of glasses of orange juice, went to the pool, and it came right back. So I'm at work for 6 hours with like my eyes as big as basketballs. And God, I work at a pool, so I could wear my sunglasses the whole time. But I was losing it the whole time. Just watching these, the bug-headed people jumping off the high dive into the pool and watching these lizard-skinned kids swimming around in front of me. It was not fun. And then the next day when I saw him, I punched him in the arm. I said, "You're an ass." I had to actually sit in a chair and possibly save someone's life, and you gave me the wrong information. So,
yeah, that sounds like a bad trip that just keeps going. So.
It was actually a good event until that time, and I wanted it to stop. But he told me how to make it continue, and I didn't want that. But And I'm sure there's probably some way to do it, milk, or maybe you smoke a whole bowl of hashish. I don't know, but there's some way to stop the LSD at some point. And having an event that went near on 23 hours straight, I was destroyed for the next 2 days. So.
Yeah, I've had new types of cannabis where I was high for almost 5 or 6 hours, and I took a microdose. I had one hit.
Yeah,
and it was because I wasn't used to it. I had never had it before, and luckily the high point was over within a couple of hours. But you know what I'm talking about. You're still feeling it, and you got to get in a car, and you kind of don't want to drive, but you got to go do something. So that kind of makes you think twice about doing weed during a weekday. That's why I recommend people do it once a week, or once and then wait a day or two to kind of regenerate or come back from it and then do it again. So
some of this newer stuff I've noticed that's exactly the way it is you get that couch. What did you call it? Couch what?
Couch lock.
Couch lock. Yeah. You're like, I want to go do something. No, I don't. I don't want to do anything. Sit right here, and it's like 5 or 6, like you said, 5 or 6 hours for it to, before the peak, you get to the top and start coming down, and then it's like, what do I do now?
Yeah,
you're sitting there for so long, you don't know what the next step. You don't know that you're hungry. You don't know if you're thirsty. It's just, it's okay if you want to be vegged out like that, but I like to be active. So when I was a kid, I would go to the mall. I had an MGB, which had this really awesome interior. I was able to hide all my weed and paraphernalia underneath the armrest. And no cop was ever able to find it. And no matter how many times I got pulled over, they never, ever found it. But I would go to the mall, I'd go to the parking lot, somewhere in the parking levels in the dark corner, get high, and then walk into the mall. And this is back in the time you could smoke cigarettes in the mall, and I smoked cigarettes. So I'd go and I'd buy what I needed, comic book, toy, whatever, and I'd sit down at a bench, and I would just smoke cigarettes and just watch how stupid all the unstoned people were.
Yeah.
My brain was active. I was just watching how just dumb this kid is, or these two girls are talking about the dumbest thing I've ever even encountered in my life, and this mother here is slapping her kid because the kid wants a candy. Well, that's what I did when I was a teenager. I just messed around in the mall and watched people while I was high.
Again, my big emphasis with cannabis today is you need to not think of it as a way just to get polluted and totally high that you can't function. You need to look at the strains that accentuate creativity. Say just before you go to a movie and you want to see the movie in a different level, a creative high is great. Arousal for sex, pain management. Say you want to work with your intuition. There's new strains that are great with working with the intuitive side of things. And this is the whole new benefit of this wonderful plant medicine, cannabis, marijuana, weed, whatever you want to call it. It's not about getting polluted, getting so high that you can't function. Those days are over. And whenever I see magazines promoting very, very high levels of THC strains, or people that want to smoke concentrates, which is liquid concentrate, you're not going to be able to function after you've had those, because they are so overwhelmingly powerful that you can do nothing more than sit in your couch or chair or lay in your bed and just let it wear off. So
what's an overpowering percentage? Because I know you talked about that before, as far as if you find an arousal strain that has high limonene. Limonene. Yeah. So I do notice that some of the bottles, they tell you what the percentage of THC is in that particular strain. What is high? Because I've seen like 21%, 22%. I've seen 7%.
Yeah, anything up to the low 20s is fine. High THC, like say from the average is say 15 to 24. That's an average. When it starts getting high, it means the grower, specifically enhance the plant to be in the low 40s, 50s. You'll even see some plants that are as high as 50 to 60% THC. That is getting way, way too high. There's no way for you to function when you're that high. Somebody who's a regular smoker, though, who smokes every day, wouldn't be as effective as somebody who's fairly new to it or is an infrequent user once or twice a week. You don't need to be that high. So the THC levels should be an average of, say, 16 to 21, 22% THC. And that's very, very, you can function well. But again, if you're new to it, if you've not smoked cannabis, you should start out with 14 to 16% with those really small hits and just feel what it feels like.
And the stuff that we were getting in the 80s and 90s is probably what, somewhere in the 8, 9, 10%?
Yeah, the low teens.
Yeah.
You know, maybe like Maui Wowie, I think, was 10 to 14 or something like that percent. Very low. Because they weren't developing it for higher levels of THC.
Yeah,
Plus,
no,
they weren't treating the plant very well.
Yeah, they weren't. They were growing it for money. But I've asked this of other pro-weed, pro-marijuana researchers. I don't know if you came across this in research for your book, but how do you think marijuana was discovered? And the story that I heard, and it's probably BS, but I heard that the Native American Indians years and years ago, and probably before the white man ever got here, noticed certain animals frolicking in this certain bush. And they went and finally investigated and realized that they could cook with it, eat with it, and smoke it in their tobacco, smoke it with their tobacco and have fun with it. And that's how marijuana is discovered as far as Native Americans are concerned. It's
found, they think that it was found in China and in India, and it was brought to Europe and the Americas probably through the diffusion, which is exchange. The current thinking is that it's perhaps a few thousand years old. I think that it's significantly older. In fact, I think that it was almost engineered for human consumption by a previous race, another epic, pre-Ice Age group, whatever you want to call that. Simply because it's engineered so perfectly and it matches our physiology on a cellular level. Endocannabinoids are part of our physical makeup. Cannabinoids are the compounds in marijuana. When we look at it microscopically, the cellular structure is almost the same between the plant and the human being. That's why it's such a wonderful high and so beneficial, because the body absorbs it. People who are in great pain with arthritis or with cancer can take strains of cannabis, and rather than taking an opioid, they take these strains and it has immediate effects because it locks into the cellular level harmoniously, like it was made for humans. And that's what it looks like. It looks like it was actually made for us.
If that's true, then answer me this: why did dogs like it so much? Not to be funny, but there's the old Cheech and Chong story where they follow their dog around for a week because they ate their stash. But dogs typically will try to get into it. And I had a cat, and I swear to God, this is the weirdest cat I've ever. I have one cat now who doesn't mind me blowing the smoke over her face, but she doesn't come looking for it. This one cat I had, when my friends would get together, we would go to my basement and we'd start. But before we start smoking, usually the cat would come in. He would jump from lap to lap until he found the person who had the bag of weed on him. And then he would you laugh, I swear. And this cat would find the weed and sit next to that guy. And I'd be like, "So you got something?" He's like, "How do you know?" Like, the cat ratted you out. And I'd tell the guys, if you're going to smoke it, just make sure you blow your 1 or 2 hits at the cat. Don't blow it in his face. Blow it over his face. And the cat would sit next to this one dude or two dudes, whoever had the weed. And if you blew your smoke at him, he would stick his nose up and you'd see the nose wrinkle up as he would breathe in the smoke. And I swear he would take 2 or 3 hits and then he'd go outside. So
wow. Yeah, I don't know about animal reaction to weed. I know that I have friends that will make brownies infused with cannabis, and they'll give their animals some. But honest to God, it's just very dangerous for you to give your animal any kind of edible.
Yeah,
it's hard enough on human beings because everybody digests differently. They have different enzymes in their gut.
Oh, I agree. The edibles are really dangerous. I haven't really tried too many of them, but everyone's got a story where their dog ate their stash.
Honestly, I haven't heard that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I have a few friends who've had that, and then the dog doesn't die. I mean, it's okay. And we got curious as to what the cat did after he got his 3 or 4 bong hits. So one day when the house was empty, it was just me and my friends. We got the cat high, or he got himself high. Rather, we just blow our smoke at him. We went upstairs, and all of us, there were like 4 or 5 of us, we went to 4 or 5 different rooms, windows on the main level. I let the cat out. You know what he did?
What?
He ran around the house 3 times, exactly 3 times, and then went over to a puddle of mud on the side of the backyard and fell over in it and just rested. He got high and went for a jog. True story.
I would think it would be, like really good catnip for a cat,
I think what it did was it made him want to exercise, because he was a big chubby kitty. We called him Cubby, but he was chubby, and he just ran around and flopped over in a puddle of mud. It was just the most random thing I've ever seen.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. I wish I'd have gotten that on camera. That would have been pretty neat, seeing this cat just go boom. I mean, he did it quick. I mean, it was like in a matter of a minute, he was around that house 3 times.
I mean, I don't have any data on it, but I bet you it can be used for animal care as well. I would think it would be something for your pharmacological collection. If you have a cat with certain illnesses or issues, it's probably going to be good for them too. But I'm not sure, because obviously cat physiology is different than humans.
I would imagine that it has similar effects as far as cancers go, because cats get very similar cancer stuff. They get leukemia, they get lung cancers and brain cancer. So it's kind of hard to make a cat smoke, unless they really want to. Like my cat now, I have a Maine Coon. And whenever I get some, she'll sit in front of me, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay." So I'll do a bong hit, and I'll blow it at her. She'll stick her face up and breathe in a couple of hits, and then she'll go away. I can imagine that making pharmaceuticals for cats are hard anyway. Dogs difficult. Their bodies are different sizes, but if we can find that ingredient, and it's either cannabinoid or THC, find the percentage of those chemicals that kills cancer. We could give it to everybody: cats, dogs, blue whales, everybody who gets cancer, and cure the damn thing. And allegedly, the U.S. government already has cures for cancer, and that may be one of the patents they have on marijuana. They do have a stack of patents on marijuana. So I found that.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing, is because it's been illegal for so long, the universities haven't been able to study it as much, and we're just getting back online to understanding how it works as a healing tool. And I think you're right. I think it probably would cross over to the pet care area, and we could have something for our animals that would be miraculous. But we have to just get into the labs and get the research done first.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is get that off that Schedule 5 and bring it down to Schedule 1.
Yeah.
We're getting there. I mean, with 16, 17 states already legal medically or recreationally. And another 16 or 17 come. Are all 16 going to pass? We
don't know. It depends on. I mean, obviously, someone in the legislation of the states that are putting these ballots on the voting plate think that they will pass. I think the majority are looking to pass. I think the only state that has no legislation is Idaho. For some reason, Idaho doesn't really care. But if neighboring states around Idaho legalize it, they'll be forced to do it. It's the same thing that happened like 2 years ago when New York legalized it. Because it's such an important state, all the surrounding states, Jersey, Philadelphia,
Vermont, Maine.
yeah, they're all got new legislation. Well, Vermont's always been legal.
Yeah.
So,
but the reason is because so their citizens aren't going back and forth and creating, legislation problems. You can imagine people you'd have to arrest if you were a border state of New York and all your citizens are going across the border getting marijuana and coming back. You would pollute your court systems. It would be disgusting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. In Texas, I think even today, they're not legal. And, if you have an ounce of weed, you can be thrown in jail. There's people in jail that have been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
In California, when we legalized it 5 years ago, we actually let people out of jail who had been criminally charged with possession.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to change the landscape pretty quickly.
I hope so, because there are people that have been in jail in certain states, or maybe not as recent as now, but years and years and years ago. A guy finds, even in what is the movie Where the Buffalo Roam, the first movie on Dr. Hunter S. Thompson. Bill Murray plays Hunter S. Thompson. They sent a kid to jail for like 3 years for one joint.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a fictional thing, but there are actual real stories where people had gone to jail for 6 or 7 years for one joint, and there were people in those same courthouses that went to jail for 5 years that had just shot someone to death. So how is a joint more peniologically sound for 7 years than you killing somebody? I can go and kill someone and have a joint
lunacy.
For 12 years.
It's lunacy.
It's insane. Yes, absolutely.
I know I wanted to ask you about Earth Ancients, Cliff, and one thing I want to ask you that's coming into my mind kind of off the cuff, and you may not know anything about this subject, but if you do, then let me know. I've heard different things about ancient cultures having situations with the sun. Like I think, who's that Robert Schoch guy? I may have said his name wrong, but I know I have his book.
Schoch.
About
Robert Schoch.
I've heard things about the sun, like maybe some ancient societies may have got a solar flare and got wiped out, or some may have tried to protect themselves from something like that happen. Has that subject ever came up at all with the sun? Anything weird?
Yeah,
like
we've had
that?
Schoch on the program a couple of times, and his newest book is on his theory of sunburst, basically making the surface of the planet uninhabitable.
Wow, I need to look.
And the reason that he believes this is if you go to Turkey, there are huge cities underground. There's a famous one called Derinkuru, where they dug out a solid rock a quarter mile underground, and they supplied these people with running water, with air vents. And the archaeologists thought it was just to hide from the marauding locals who wanted to rape and pillage. But it turns out that some of these dwellings were made for long-term habitation. Now, I just came back from Egypt, and at Saqqara, where it's the home of the Dujor pyramid, they have uncovered a huge labyrinth of rooms and tunnels about 20 feet under the surface. And I had a chance to go into a few of these tunnels with the tour group we were with, and they're made for habitation for long periods of time. And the locals have a number of myths that the surface was so uninhabitable that the people had to go underground to survive. The solar flare still killed off thousands of people.
Wow.
But a number of them, mostly in the governance area, survived by being underground. And it looks like there's different parts of the world where people actually went underground to survive whatever was happening. So Schoch Shock's theory is very, very unusual, and it's also frightening because if we had a solar flare today, not only would it melt down our communication system, it would melt down our power. It would kind of throw us back a bit because it would damage all of our data systems, which now are huge repositories for information for daily living, be it banking, be it medical, be it whatever. A solar flare would be devastating. So, yeah, Dr. Robert Schoch.
Yeah.
He's brilliant.
The sun is concerning me a lot lately. Like it's so hot you can barely go outside. It's like, we got to go underground right now. That's what it feels like.
That's more to the level of polluting our atmosphere and getting rid of the ozone. As the ozone is a protective layer. It's like a layer. It's like a sheet of protective skin that keeps these really powerful rays. Yeah. And when you destroy the ozone with pollutants, you increase the amount of heat that comes through. That's just one factor that happens. The other thing is that we don't have the same weather that we used to. Weather's more violent. We have hurricanes and heat. I think the other day I read that not only the South, but a lot of central United States and some of the western states, including California, have been receiving record heat, triple-digit heat in June. So,
what about all those cattle that died? That was crazy. Did you see that? It's like thousands of cattle that died in Kansas, just dead on the side of the road. Someone said 10,000. It was thousands. That's all I know.
Well, that's the tip of the iceberg, Jeffrey. California is the breadbasket for a lot of the country, as well as a lot of the neighboring states. We have a drought. We have a multi-year drought. We have farmers that are digging under their crops because they can't feed them. They can't water them. And, we're going to have to find alternatives. Right now it looks like if we keep having these dry seasons, we're going to have to desalinate seawater, which these big pumps draw in seawater, convert it to drinkable or agricultural water, like the Saudis do. And that might be our future, but that's not a good solution. We need good rain. So, global warming, big time.
Things are like a horror movie right now between the crazy Ukraine stuff and just the China tensions and just everything. It's just freaking nuts, man. It can't get any crazier. Just when you think it can't get any crazier, it does. And then Yellowstone, all that just happened with Yellowstone was creepy. They even said something, that they were some kind of situation with the super volcano, that it was getting weaker or something. I saw that. I don't know how reputable the news sources I saw was. Just stuff like that. It seems like everything's about to explode on a lot of different levels. It's definitely creepy on many different levels. So, what you talk about ancient civilizations mostly on your podcast?
No, we talk about like this week. It's Forgotten Civilizations of South America. That's a big one with a Chilean historian. But no, we talk about technologies. We talk about research that doesn't make sense, that seems to have come out of nowhere. Have you heard of the Antikytherian mechanism? It's the device that was found in the Mediterranean. It's attributed to the Greeks or the early Romans, but the technology in this device is so sophisticated, it looks likely that it was handed down to the ancient Romans by another civilization because they can't find anything that's close to it. So the Antikytherian device are some of the topics we bring up with scientists. The other thing we talk about is planetary discovery. We have a number of people that are from NASA and JPL, and it looks like NASA has not disclosed major discoveries on the moon and on Mars. And we have a couple of regulars. One is Dr. Mark Carlotto, who is an image specialist who actually wrote the software for the Viking missions and some of the other satellite missions. And some of the early imagery that came back from Mars show massive destruction of cities. And when I say cities, from a satellite's point of view, it's the framing, it's the walls, it's the roads that are available in some of the imagery. And yet we have NASA spending $2.5 billion on a rover looking for microbes and for water. Well, it's kind of like bait and switch, you know. The feeling now is that the rover has the one team, which is the public-facing team, looking for microbes, and then there's probably a black ops team that has a rover and it's bumping into staircases and temples. And I mean, this stuff has been known about for 30 years, and yet these NASA refuses to come clean and say, look, we have found the evidence of a lost civilization here. So
have you come across, or did you go with the discussions on the Mars subject? Did you guys discuss the Velikovsky theories that number one, something came really, really close to Mars and siphoned off both the atmosphere and the water, and possibly even dumping its water right here on Earth, number one. And number two, that same event caused a static buildup or static charge that came from whatever celestial body passed by Mars and gouged out this giant canyon. If you look at this canyon from the pictures, it looks like a spark or a lightning strike that hit the ground. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? This canyon?
No, but I'll tell you this, that we were lucky to have Dr. John Brandenburg on our program. He wrote a book about 5 years ago called Death on Mars, and he believes that there was a battle between two factions, and one of the fighting factions dropped 2 nuclear bombs that basically destroy the atmosphere and left an isotope signature that we only see after a nuclear detonation. And it is an isotope that is prevalent in the Mars atmosphere that NASA has known about and has tried to squelch for the last couple of decades. When you begin analyzing the surface of the ground, he was able to show where these bombs were detonated, and it appears that they were detonated above the ground, but the blast sites were so big that it left impressions on the ground.
Scorch marks, yeah.
Yeah. So Velikovsky, I do know about his work, but I don't really focus that much on Mars because we now have enough new data, which, by the way, NASA doesn't verify. And after Brandenburg came out with his book, they moved him to California. He was in Michigan. He was doing black ops stuff for 2 years. So, yeah, Mars is a real dilemma because there's a planetary scientist group that is trying to get them to come clean, and yet they just won't do it.
But they won't complain about the moon either. I mean,
they won't complain about the moon. And recently, you must have heard that the U.S. Space Command has reclassified UFOs as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yeah.
And we had this NASA astronomer said they're doing that because they're going to have to at some point start talking about who's driving these vehicles and where they're coming from. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard so many different things with that, from inner Earth to Nazis to aliens from another planet. Like, there's just so many theories on that. I just know I've seen them and I've seen weird beings. So when you see like Neil Tyson, which I like him, but he's like, I think he said stuff like aliens have never come here or whatever. Yeah. It's insulting.
Yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson is wrong, for one thing.
When there's, and I like the guy, but
I like him too.
Stuff like that,
he's wrong.
Just like, Do you know how many people I've interviewed that have been through these experiences? I've had Captain Robert Salas, Air Force. I forget the rank, but he's still enlisted. He put out a book about UFOs shutting down the missile silos at his base,
Yeah.
and this dude's still enlisted.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just a slap in the face.
I'll tell you what's really funny is I had Ken Johnston Sr., who was Apollo astronaut. He was part of the team that designed the suits. He didn't get a chance to go anywhere, but he was actually recruited from Mars. The astronauts are supposed to sign a non-disclosure agreement from day one, but people like Mitchell and all these other guys, Gordon Cooper, they've seen these craft shadowing them. The Apollo mission and the shuttles have seen, and there's documents of craft that are watching what they're doing. And a lot of people that we've had on the show, especially those who claim to be in touch with these aliens, say that many of these so-called UAPs are occupied by alien researchers, like anthropologists who are studying the human being, So, and I keep saying, I mean, I've been studying this stuff for 25, 30 years. And I keep saying, I don't care to see it anymore. Land your ship, come on out, shake my hand, and let's talk about joining the Federation of Planets.
Yeah,
And then
I completely agree.
yeah.
One of the things that I brought up a lot of times on the show in response to what Neil deGrasse Tyson said about aliens visiting the planet, typically whenever a expert, particularly a scientist, says no, it's impossible, can't be done, someone proves them wrong immediately. And the best example I have of that is, I don't know if you're aware of the Trieste project of 1957.
Trieste?
The Trieste. It was the Bath Escape project. Back in 1957, 58, all these marine biologists and marine scientists and engineers and scientists in general got together and got the money to build a bath escape to see how far down the bottom of the ocean they could go. And the plan was to get to the very bottom in like Marianas Trench, 8-9 miles. So we had two fields of groups. One field says we're not going to find anything at the bottom of the ocean. It's the pressures are too high, the water's too cold, and at that pressure and that temperature, the water's probably more like ammonia than water. So there's nothing going to be alive down there, not even bacteria. Then you have the other group that was a little less extreme. They said, well, we're going to find something. We're going to find bacteria, meteorologicals, maybe a mollusk. So we're going to find something that can survive those pressures. So they send two guys down. And what do you think they found? A bony fish like a sole, a flat-faced fish with both sets of eyes, 4 eyes on one side of its body, that kicked up so much silt they could no longer see, and they had to go back up. But that proves the point. Both scientists said it's either going to be the most minimal crap we can find or nothing whatsoever. But it was more right down the middle when they finally got down there. And the same is going to be true of the aliens. Is it going to be us from the future, aliens from another solar system, aliens from the future, aliens from another dimension? It's going to be more than an amalgam of those several theories right there.
Yeah. I got to close out, guys. Cliff, it's been great. Keep us in the loop with the Black Knight satellite situation, and we'd love to get you back on for sure.
Yeah, I'll come out and I'll send you a press release when it comes out.
Cool. Yeah, just let me know. And Cliff Dunning, his book is Cannabis and Sexual Ecstasy for Men: Awaken the Prostate for Multiple Orgasms, and it's on Amazon. And it's been great having you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you both. Pleasure
What's
to
your
meet
website?
you.
Let's get your website.
Oh, Earth Ancients. Well, I'm sorry. For the book, themaleorgasm.com. That's has a free chapter in it. It has more information about the various strains we talked about today. If you're interested in ancient civilizations, that is Earth Ancients. You can go to earthancients.com, and there are shows from 2014 to present. We put out a show every Saturday.
All righty. We appreciate it so much. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good weekend. And next week is Jerry Sargent. It's like this British dude that claims he does star healing energy. Apparently, the strange thing about him is he used to work with all these criminals in Britain and all this stuff. So we're going to talk about that. Kind of creepy, but we'll talk about it. But he's reformed now and does star healing. So that's good. Former British mafia. Hopefully, we don't die. All right, everybody. Have a good weekend. And thanks, Cliff. Thanks, Jay.
Cheers.
And,
Cheers.
Have a good weekend. Good night, everybody. I got to get off here before JoJo shows up and tries to grab me. But my Christina and the dogs are in the RV. It's hot. I got to get out there and help them to get back in.
All right, cool. I'm going to go upstairs and smoke and then come down and join Joe's show.
All right. Take care.
Thanks,
right,
man.